I'm joined by Dr. Barak Muluka, who's a political scientist. Asante for your time. Dr. Gashui Kariuki, who's a public health specialist, and equally joined by Jim India, who's the head of policy research and learning at the Emerging Leaders Foundation. Before the break, gentlemen, we definitely talked about matters to do with varsity education and the signs of changes that are happening. But let's shift focus right now to another top story that has featured prominently on today's dailies, all to do with that particular letter from the AU on February 19th from the chairperson, Musa Faki, all to do with Raila's exit as envoy as the AU High Representative for Infrastructure and Development role. According to Raila, he asked to exit this particular position due to the challenges, availability challenges, and on the flip side, the AU seems to have let him go 8 months shy out of his contract. And as my director perhaps can assist us with this, there's a editorial cartoon on the Daily Nation that perhaps puts it in a comical way, bringing satire into it. If we could see it on our screens right now, it's all to do with Raila Odinga and what I've just mentioned right now. If we could kindly see it on the screens. Okay, there we go. Gentlemen, at least we can indulge and get to discuss about this, because as you can see, one of the eggs rather that Raila is juggling happens to have dropped down. Allow me to zoom in so we can definitely see what's going on there. One of them, the AU post, is cracked, unfortunately, but he's still juggling 3 issues: mass action, Azimio allies, and the ODM rebels. And as you can see, he's definitely walking on a tightrope. So this is no mean task, no mean feat. But this is a gentleman who has been described as the enigma in Kenyan politics. So, gentlemen, Barak Muluka, well, what do you make of this editorial cartoon and the question of whether he was, pushed out or did he quit? Is it neither here nor there?
See, the position that Mr. Odinga has been holding within the AU was essentially an outcome of a political process back at home. That as part of the appeasement that President Uhuru Kenyatta extended towards Mr. Odinga was finding a place for him within the African Union circuit. And I don't know whether this is true or not. Earlier on, I talked about allegations. And so I speak on caution that, in fact, the Kenya government was paying Mr. Odinga through the African Union. Okay?
You're not sure about that?
I'm not sure about it, but I have very good cause to believe that that is indeed the case. In fact, I think it needs to be pursued, particularly by you journalists, to establish the total veracity of that. And then you get to a point where there's a new sheriff in town, and you know where Mr. Odinga is with that new sheriff in town. And that can tell you what is happening about this negotiated position, that it was negotiated as a part of the appeasement is not in doubt. Okay? Then you have Mr. Odinga giving the president a 14-day ultimatum to say that he's going to return the country to disorder, because these things that he's talking about of mass action are basically taking the country into a context of disorder. Now, the African Union itself, before we even talk about the position of the country and its remittances, and certainly this country makes remittances to the African Union, and it would be part of that anyway, that Mr. Odinga was getting paid, whether there was something supernumerary that was then going to him or not now starts becoming neither here nor there. But within the AU context itself, you cannot go around the place intimidating the government of the day that has been constitutionally elected and constitutionally validated by the highest court in the land on the basis of some moonshine kind of revelations, so-called, by an invisible whistleblower whose name is not even known, who has no face, no body. And you are going out to destabilize the country on the basis of that. They will not keep you there because they don't want to encourage insurgents in their own spaces, because you start moving towards the domain of insurgency. This is no longer opposition. This is about making the country unworkable. It's about destabilizing the environment so that the person in power ostensibly gets to a position where they say, now my regime is no longer tenable. Okay. As he has been saying, I must go. And worst of all, he says, we are going to take power. What is to take power? It is to overthrow the established constitutional order. And the AU is not going to carry along with you.
And just briefly, before we cross over to other guests, what do you make of a vibrant opposition? What would you term as a vibrant opposition? One that holds the government to account, but how should it? Because they're agitating for mass action in order to push the current administration to lower the cost of living, reintroduce subsidies, we've heard of that, apart from opening the service. So how would you term a vibrant opposition? Because this is what the current administration asked for.
A vibrant opposition begins by recognizing the constitutional order, that there is a president or a prime minister or whoever that foremost head of government may be, that there is a government that is legitimate. And this government has been validated by the constitutional order in the country. When you say that we do not recognize this government, and you say that this government must go, you are saying we don't recognize Ruto and all his appointees. You are no longer the opposition. You are insurgents. Your agenda is no longer to reform the environment in which that government is functioning. Your agenda is to overthrow the government through illegal means. When Mr. Odinga says that the people are going to take back the power, what is he saying? He's basically saying that we are going to use extra-legal, in fact, illegal mechanisms outside the Constitution. And he's hanging onto the article of the Constitution that says that all sovereign power belongs to the people, and the people may exercise it either directly or through their elected representatives. So he's saying the people are going to take back the power. He's saying, basically, that when we start mass action, we are going to march to State House, and we are going to flush out Ruto, and me, Raila Odinga, as the self-styled people's president, I will take over because our election was stolen. That is not an opposition. Those are subversives. Those are insurgents. And what we are seeing is verbal insurgency before it morphs into armed, unstable insurgency.
So how should they raise issues when it comes to the cost of living? And this is a question I will...
that there is a government and that you don't agree with the policies of this government.
And provide an alternative.
And place there an alternative. Have even your own shadow government. It may or may not be paid for, but have there your own shadow entities. You have members of parliament who will go to the various chambers to take positions that are divergent from your position, from the government's position.
Okay.
Use all public spaces and platforms to show why the government is wrong. Oppose things like this phase. Oppose things like what has happened at KRA. Come out and say why you think it is not the right thing to be done.
Okay.
Oppose government policies and activities and put there, suggest your alternatives. But you do not say that we are going to paralyze the country. That is not an opposition.
Fair enough. And luckily we have young gentlemen on the show. And perhaps, you know, with the nature of such events, the masses mostly encompass young men and women.